right, episode number 5 of We About to Get Deep, and I forgot to change the background. That's right, I'll get that. But today we're going to discuss the media's role and how it displays police brutality. So we about to get deep on this one.
How we doing? This is Rob Foster with RBF Fitness and Nutrition.
You should know the value that you bring to the marketplace. You know what your passion is. You know why you do what you do.
So racism, it's out there, but it doesn't have to stop you. Just because somebody might look at you a certain way, that doesn't have to stop your forward progress. That's where you have to eliminate the excuses. You got to make that game plan say, for me to get to that point, all right, welcome back. I got the right background up because I do 2 different shows here, so I forgot to switch it over before we started. So again, we're gonna be discussing how the media depicts police interactions, and I have someone on that's gonna have this discussion with me. I have no idea what his stances are, what his beliefs are, and I like that ahead of time because that way the conversation will just be a naturally forming, raw, organic conversation. Right, so he's joining me from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let's bring Marlon into the stream. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How you doing?
I'm blessed.
Good answer. Is it going to be a hot one down there in Philly today?
It is going to be very hot and humid. We're under like a heat advisory. I cut my air conditioner off so you could hear me, but as soon as we're done, I'm going to crack that bad boy back on.
Yeah, same thing here too. We're under a heat advisory. And with like what people don't understand about the East Coast, it's like, yeah, 93 doesn't seem hot, but with the humidity and the heat index is gonna feel like 110.
Right.
So, we may not get the numbers like they do out west, but we still feel it here. All right. So when you hear the words police brutality, just what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 54. I currently my day job is a nurse, and so I remember I was born in the 60s, so I remember the wooden sticks and water hoses and dogs, and I remember all of those things. I remember very vividly living in the housing projects in South Philadelphia, and for us, I remember being really young, even because I was like the little kid that hung around with everybody, with my bigger brothers and everything. And for some reason, they knew I couldn't, because I was little, I couldn't fend myself. But I don't even know why. But from early on, I was taught if the cops come, run. We had no idea why, because we knew that something really bad was going to happen. They might take your father away and you would never see him again. Because I had a friend who, we were kids. So, his father went to jail. We didn't see his father anymore. Somebody else's father got shot in the back and was in a wheelchair or whatever. So really bad things happened to us as young Black kids when the cops came. And I remember being even on a playground, and they would always have an escape route because the bigger guys could get away. Well, Marlon, if the cops come, you crawl through that little hole and we'll meet you on the other side and run. So, having said that, my idea of police brutality from a very, very early age was white men with, wooden sticks because they had wooden batons showing up for reasons that we didn't know, and very, very bad things happen. Having said that, through the 70s and 80s here in Philadelphia, things improved. One of the things that did improve was that the mayor, we had an African-American mayor, John Street. I guess Street was maybe 25, maybe 30 years ago. And his philosophy under the administration was that the overall city workforce should reflect the population. That is, if, the population is 40% women, then the city workforce should be 40% women. If it's 30% African-American, it should be 30% African-American. As a result of that, we had an increased number of African-Americans on the Philadelphia Police Department. My concern with that was that a lot of the people that actually there were a lot of people that I remember that there was an active recruitment process for the Philadelphia Police Department. I think I even took a civil service exam at one point, just out of curiosity, just to see where it landed. And people that scored too highly were not considered. So for whatever reason, they weren't, not people that scored low, but people who scored mediocre. So from the onset, they were hiring, in my opinion, stupid people. Because if you scored too highly on these proficiency exams, you were automatically excluded because they want you to score in a certain range. In addition to that, here in Philadelphia, I believe the police academy training is no more. It's certainly less than a year, but it's about 6 months. So you have a person that's not very smart, that doesn't get enough training. To me, a person should have 2-year degree in something, preferably criminal justice or something like that. But to answer your question, when I think of police brutality today, as opposed to, what I remember being in the 60s, police brutality today takes many different forms. It can be more subtle. I can't see, as blatant, as cops riding up and beating me with a stick, but they brutalize people verbally. There are types of harassment that result in that could be interpreted as police brutality. I think a lot of the way I see young African American men and young, particularly school children on buses and subways, the way they're treated by police is very, very brutal. I recently had an experience where I went to this might be a little bit off the subject, but I went to the adult probation and parole department because I had a friend that I was concerned about, and I was going to try to see if the court. I went to the probation department to see if I could get him some help. From the moment I walked in the door, I was appalled at the way those guys were treated. They corralled them like they're cattle. They talked to them any kind of way, whatever. And I pumped the brakes on them. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not one of them. Okay, I'm here to get help from. But I was glad that I had an opportunity to see that. But having said that, overall policing is very different for me as a black man than I feel it would be for white people or for white women. One of the things that I see, because I'm a nurse, which is it's dominated by white females most of the time. And the liberal ones or the good ones know what I'm up against. So a lot of the times they realize police brutality. I remember when we graduated from nursing school, it was a black nursing program, and I live in a trendy high rise for nurses or whatever. I wanted to go out, so I was having a huge graduation party in my apartment, and I remember. Because we have security cameras, and I saw the police coming into the lobby. I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. And I have a white neighbor across the hallway. She said, let me handle this. So I said, okay. So she came across the hallway and stood in front of my door. And when the police came, they said, can we help you? Said, oh, yeah, we're having a problem with all of the noise. She said, oh, my boyfriend and I broke up. And when we make up, we play loud music and dance. And And they said, okay, we sorry you broke up. Blah, blah. How long will you be playing this music? And she said, oh, just another hour or so. And they left. The police left. But it was so funny that had I answered the door and the police saw this party with, a room full of African Americans, even though we were nurses and we were celebrating graduation, the outcome would have been very different. And that was just one example of how police potentially brutalize African Americans. Is there a different way that you view police brutality?
Well, I see people are gonna view it based off of their experiences.
Okay.
So like you shared things that you've seen, things that you've witnessed. And for me, it's on the other side. Like, does it happen? Of course it happens. Mm-hmm. So it's like in any profession, there's going to be some ones that just don't belong there, and that's any profession.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like I'm a fitness trainer, and here in Rhode Island, a fitness trainer was accused of rape. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't mean that we're all rapists.
Right.
you know what I mean? So I feel like that's what happens. So for someone like me, I've been pulled over my fair share, and I haven't had any issues. I got pulled over drunk, right? Like I would have blew up a breathalyzer if he gave me a breathalyzer, right? It would have just exploded. But he did have me get out of the car. He gave me the field sobriety test, which thank God I'm strong, so I was able to pass it. And he followed me home. He said, as long as you get home with no issues, I'll let you go. White cop. and he followed me, and I was almost home when he veered off. And then there was another instance where my ex-wife attacked me. Like, she was hitting me, like she punched me in the mouth. My lip is bleeding. She scratched my neck. She bit my chest. And all I did was I pinned her down and I called the cops. Right, and I just held her there. And so the cop comes in, and they're talking to me. They're talking to her, and she admitted to everything. She's like, he just came home and I just went off. But this is where the bias comes into play, because usually it's the men. You know what I mean? Usually it's the men. So they're questioning her, like, did he say anything to you? Or like almost acting like I provoked her.
Right.
And so then the cop comes in and he says to me, "Is there anywhere you can go for the night?" I said, "Me?" I said, "She assaulted me."
Right.
I said I did not hit her back. And then he kind of got stern with me, and I was like, "With all due respect, you're in my living room." I said, "You don't have any jurisdiction in my living room." I said, "So don't tell me I need to calm down in my own house." But that was the closest thing I ever had to like an altercation with the police, because like and I'm not the type to say I blame the victim, but I also believe in accountability. So it's like,
sure.
I never put myself in a situation for them to have to act like that.
Okay.
And so I think sometimes.
No, I do hear that. I absolutely hear that.
Yeah. Like even on the videos. So this is where I want to get to with the media. Is like, how familiar are you with the Rayshard Brooks case?
I cannot say that I'm very familiar with me. Bring me up to speed on it. Give me the bullets.
Okay, so he was the one that was running away from the police in Atlanta, and they shot him in the back.
Yes, I did see that video.
Yeah, then they burned down the Wendy's. The rioters burned down the Wendy's. So when that first came out, only thing the media just showed a clip of him running and the cop shooting.
Right.
So now everybody's already, all stressed out over the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So the media puts out that little snippet, and then rioting starts all over again. And I remember my son, he's 22, and he was freaking out about it. He's like, "This is ridiculous." And I was like, there has to be more to this story. I was like, there has to be. I was like, because I really don't think this man would be running and the cops would just shoot him down in front of all of these people. You know what I mean? It's like, and so after a couple of weeks goes by, all of the footage comes out. So this guy passed out in his car in line at Wendy's, right? So he's driving under the influence. And so he passed out. The cops get him. He was chill at first until they went to put the handcuffs on him, right? So they go to put the cuffs on him. He resists. He ends up taking both cops down. So he's strong. He ended up snatching one of their tasers. And in Georgia, a taser is considered a lethal weapon, under Georgia law. So then he starts running. He turned around and he fired the taser at the cops. So now you have a drunk, stressed out man with a dangerous weapon. And so they put him down. You know what I mean? So when you hear it that way, what are your thoughts?
Well, when I hear it that way, it certainly does shed new light on it. And when all of that information.
Oh wait, sorry. But before you get deep into it, anything that I say, none of these people deserve to die. I just want to make that clear.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to make that clear.
So we're on the same. So if we can disagree on everything else, but we agree on that one thing. Okay.
Yeah.
My question would be, because I've also seen videos in the advent of social media and Facebook and YouTube. I've also seen. My first question would be, would a white man under the same circumstances had been treated the same way? I see videos on YouTube, Facebook all the time where white men do all kind of things, yet they're taken into custody. I saw, how do you shoot up an entire mall or shoot up a church, a black church, yet they take you into custody and give you water and wipe and brush your hair back from your face and all of these other kind of things. Yet a drunk man in a parking lot is treated differently. Here in Philadelphia, the most recent, I guess it was less than a year, there was a mentally ill man, a man who has a history of mental illness, and he was young. I guess he was about 19 or 20 years old. His parents, his mother had called. Previously in Philadelphia, we had what were called mobile response crisis units.
Mhm.
And so that would be in a mental health crisis, there would be a number that you call, and licensed mental health professionals will come out with handcuffs or straitjackets or medication or whatever necessary. And they're trained. There would be a group of them necessary to diffuse a situation. That money was taken away. And we had a place called Byberry. It was like a mental hospital. So we had a mobile response unit that would respond and take people and care for them. That money was taken away and given to the Philadelphia Police Department. So now in a mental health crisis, you call the police, you call somebody that scored borderline on a test, that was only trained 5 or 6 months, and they come out and don't know how to handle a mental health situation, and somebody ends up getting shot. When we say defund the police, no idiot, nobody in their right mind is saying take all of the police's money. But when I say defund the police, take that mental health money back from that unit, from the police, and give it back to the mental health responders, so that when things like this happen, people, social workers, nurses, people that are medically trained to handle crises like this can do this without shooting people. So back to the Rayshard Brooks incident. Would a white man under similar circumstances have been treated the same way? I don't think so. I really believe that somehow or another he would have been taken into custody for some reason without incident.
Have you heard of Tony Timpa?
I have not.
He died the exact same way George Floyd died in 2017. Exact same way.
Why do we never hear about it?
But yet no one's heard of him, because there's money in racism. Right? It's like I've been speaking on this for years. It's a cost center. Like you like pay attention to the newspapers, to the headings, to the news. Race is only specified when it's a white person doing harm to a black person. The only time race is specified. Other than that, it'll say man shot, in a drive-by, or a woman shot. Like if it's black on black, if it's black on Hispanic, Hispanic on Asian, it never comes up. But if a white person harms any person of color, they make sure to specify the race. So that's why the Tony Timpa case, there's no money in that. But a white cop does it to a black man, that's going to cause hysteria, which is going to make more news, more sales, more clicks, more ad revenue, and that's why they gaslight it. So to answer the other part of your question too, is like one thing that I feel is a flaw amongst people of color, and I always get a lot of hate for this, is because you've said it a couple of times already, is, well, if that would have happened to a black person, it would have been different. It's like, you can't just assume that, because a lot of times circumstances matter. So if they go to track down this guy or woman, and they're not really putting up a fight, but in most of the videos we've seen, like the Jacob Blake one, same thing. He was fighting the cops. He took 2 tasers. I don't know how he shrugged that off, but he knocked down the 3 cops, took 2 tasers, and was walking to his car to get a weapon. Like, at some point, you have to take him down. And again, that doesn't mean he had to be shot 8 times. I mean, that part was excessive. But what led up to the shooting, it matters. Because I saw one where a white man had a machete, I believe. Like he had it in his hand.
Yeah, absolutely. They didn't.
Yeah, he had it in his.
Yeah. But the other, and I do hear what you're saying, and several things. The first thing is that I realized that they did monetize racism. I mean, and that there is money in it. But for me to say that and then pretend that racism doesn't still exist. I'm not saying it exists to the same magnitude that it did that I remember as a kid in the 60s and the 70s. But I think for them to monetize it and make money off of it is an insult to the people who actually experience real racism every day. Because if we play like the boy who cried, wolf, the wolf is coming, the wolf is coming, the wolf is coming, and then the wolf really comes. Nobody listens to you because you've been crying wolf the entire time. So if we scream racism about every single incident,
I agree.
Then when there's a real incident of racism, it's like, okay, here they go again. So
I agree.
But I'm not saying that but I still believe that the police respond differently when African Americans are involved. If you look at the Capitol, Capitol riots. Just, I don't know, a month before that, when the Black Lives Matter protesters didn't get anywhere near the step of the Capitol because of response. They knew that they were coming. The response was so different. And Black Capitol police officer interviewed will tell you the exact same thing. The response was very, very different. They couldn't even get on the step. White people were able to storm the Capitol. They would have stormed the Capitol. They killed the police officer. Another woman got shot. Thousands of dollars worth of damage. It's going to cost millions and millions of dollars and years to investigate and litigate everything that happened that day. That would have never, ever happened if these were Black people. These white people were allowed to do this, obviously. The police's response was very different because they were white. If they had been BLM supporters or protesters, they weren't even able to get near the step. So while I do hear that racism has become monetized, police's response to African Americans in this situation is very different. In the beginning of this conversation, you said that a person's response is going to be based on their own personal experience. My own personal experience is that the police respond very differently to white and black, to Black and white people. I live on North Broad Street by Temple University. Temple is a major university in Philadelphia. I live right on Temple's campus. So I watched the neighborhood gentrify itself around me. So luckily, old head got to stay in the hood and watch it be built up around me. So I live in a very, very beautiful area. I'm going to walk downtown when we get done because it's it's too hot for that. I'll hop the car. But my point is I don't know if my neighbors and fellow Temple students are too liberal or too sympathetic as white people, but they constantly realize that because they're white and I am Black, we would be treated very differently in different circumstances. I remember when I was in nursing school, there was like a deli or like a convenience store where I would always go to break for lunch. And when I would go there, I would always see like these young white kids hanging around outside. It would because I would always break the same time every day. And I could never figure out why they were always there. And this one particular time, they would wait for me to walk in and then they would walk in behind me. And it would be one particular time, some friends of mine, the white girls, of course, they said, "Come here." And there was a window and we watched outside. The white kids knew that when I went into the store, they were going to follow me around. So while they were following me around in the store, the white kids were in the back ripping the entire store off. So they waited for the Black guy to come every single day to go into the store because they knew the Black kids were going to get fired while they're stealing. So the response was very, very different. And a lot of the times I remember applying for, and this is kind of it's not related to police brutality per se, but as a nurse, when I apply for nursing jobs, all of the time, because you have friends who are nurses, well, come work over here while I am on the side. You pull each other to different jobs, but they always tell me. I remember we went up to New York. Philly is like an hour, maybe 90 minutes from New York. So we go up to New York all the time, where marijuana brownies are edible. So we went up with the girls because we were celebrating that I was getting hired at their job and we're eating edibles. They were eating edibles, but they said, "Marlon, you can't have any." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because when we go back to this job, I promise you, they're going to run your background and drug test you. We're white girls. We know they're not going to do that to us." I said, "Oh, whatever." And they were so right. When we got back, I got drug tested. It took days because they had to run the criminal background police check, and the white girls didn't. So overall, for some reason, the assumption or the presumption that Black men are more of a threat than white men or white women, particularly, has been my experience as well too. I remember. Go ahead.
Hold on. Let's talk about that. So, do you know how many police interactions there are per year?
I do not.
Okay, there's roughly 60 million.
Okay.
You know how many involve Blacks?
I do not know, and I really don't like numbers. But go ahead.
No, it's relevant. It's relevant, right? Okay. So out of 60 million, it's 60 million. 11 million are with Blacks. So that in itself is, I don't even know the percentage wise, but it's pretty low. And as far as shootings,
wait. What source are you quoting?
This is from the this is FBI stats.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't quote nonsense. Yeah, when they were me is.
I wish I had prepared. If I knew what we were going to talk about, I would have looked it up. But that's just one source. I don't know how they collect that information.
Well, even still, there's 160 million whites in the country, and there's 40 million blacks. Yeah,
Okay.
you know, there's 40 million blacks. So like the amount of police interactions that white people have is more.
Because let me finish.
I know. And I'm saying
more white people.
I know. Hold on. But I'm saying, but we see the black interactions on television because it causes outrage. It's not so much that it happens more often. It's because that's what causes outrage. Like, you can't turn on the TV without seeing blacks committing some type of crime. Like, you just can't. It's all over the news. When white people commit far more, it's just not shown. Like I said with the Tony Timpa case, he died the exact same way with a knee on the back. He died right there. They were joking, thinking he passed out. They were like, say, "Hey, wake up, sweetheart, time for school," like laughing, joking. And then once they realized he was dead, this is all on body camera too. So like once they realized he was dead, then they were like, "Oh shit." You know, but it took, I think it was 2 years before they released the body cam footage. And again, it's because there's no outlet. So like the whole point of this was to talk about how the media displays it. You know, like not to dispute that it happens. Like I said, I know it happens. But my question to you is, at what point do we take some of the accountability for these police interactions?
Do we as as citizens, or we as black men? I mean, because I belong to so many different groups. So when you say we as who?
Just people in general.
Okay,
people in general.
Okay, well, because I hear two different things. The first thing I want to address is how the media depicts it, and of course, there's a leftist view and there's a right view. There's always, for some reason, there's always going to be the liberal view and the liberal interpretation of it, and then there's going to be the right wing interpretation of it. And I listen to people like Can Good Owens, and I have to be careful what I say about her. I detest her. I think black people would be better off if they took her somewhere and euthanized her. Candace Owens, I despise that lady. I think when the media protects, even black people pimp other black people out. If they can make money off of it one way or the other, they do. So you have, so the way the media depicts it is very different with being left or right. And the other thing was, what were we talking about? Bring me back. We were talking about the way the media protect and our responsibility. What part do we play in, or what do we do to address it? One of the things that I have always learned to do, I was really lucky. I had very, very progressive parents. So my mother, even when we lived in the housing projects, at that time, there was a shortage of school teachers in the Philadelphia public school system. So my mother got a full ride to Temple University because they needed school teachers at the time. And so she became Miss Brandon, and she bought a house, and we lived in a middle class neighborhood and all this other kind of stuff. And so from that, I learned it's very much how I carry myself. I'm very, very smart. I've done well for myself financially. I always, I always drive a nice car. Usually when I get it, I pay cash for it. I got to be careful who's watching this, but I always drive a nice car. But when the police stop me, I'm very, very careful. I always have everything where I can reach it. I have my, I know they're going to ask for driver's license, insurance, and registration minimum. I have that ready. I keep my hands on the steering wheel at all times. I don't want to give them any reason to shoot me or to be afraid of me or whatever. So to answer your question, it isn't how we carry ourselves, and we have to look at what role we play in it. A lot of the times with younger African-American men in my neighborhood, I constantly mentor them. I'm constantly telling them, don't listen. You can't do that. And I might say you cannot do the same thing that your white friend does and get away with it. And I truly believe that. Some of the worst habits that, let me tell you something. I was in Temple University and I lived in a dormitory at the particular time. This one way back in the Stone Ages. But anyway, at that particular time, I decided I was going to hang out, at a frat party. We were doing shots of Jack Daniels, not on everybody was getting hooked up with, where they want to work when they got out of school or whatever. White boys decided they wanted to smoke joint.
Yeah.
So somehow or another, we had RAs, residential advisors, smell the weed. Everybody got written up. We had to go before a J board. All of the white boys got a $50 fine, which back then was it wasn't a lot of money, but that was enough to slap you on the hand. I got kicked out of the dorm. But because I lived in North Philadelphia, I lived right in my hood. I just, commuted back and forth to work. So, but having said that, even when I look at what part I play in it, somehow or another, I'm still treated differently. Even when I look at what part I play in it and, apologizing, I was wrong. I'm still treated differently. I remember one time here in Philadelphia, I hopped into a cab. I was out partying or whatever. When I hopped into the cab, apparently the meter, what I believe was happening was the meter had already been running. He'd never cleared it. So when the cab driver took me home, it was like double or triple what it should have been. I guess he thought I was drunk, so I wouldn't have known. And I said, no. That's too much. The Philadelphia taxi cabs are retired police officer vehicles. They can throw a button in the front of the car and lock you in. So I called the police. I said, listen, this man is trying to rip me off in this cab driver, and I'm being illegally detained in this cop car, in this cab. Do you know that the police came and arrested me? So,
wow.
We went to court and the judge threw it out. It was ridiculous and all this other kind of stuff. But had I been, let's say I was a white woman and somebody locked me in the back seat of a cab. Oh, I would be kidnapped, attempted rape, assault. They would have thrown the book at them. But it was okay to lock a black man in the back seat of a car. So it's my relationship with the police. I pretty much stay away from them, even though I'm not anti-police. I certainly have never had any positive interactions with them, even looking at what part I play in it, playing in anything.
See, but you handled that the right way, though, by going to court. Like, that's what I teach my kids. I tell them never, ever, under any circumstances, do you fight with the cop. Ever.
Oh, absolutely. You're right.
Yeah, I said, because you're never going to win, and it could end very badly. I said, never. I said, even if you think he's dead wrong, you take the ticket, we call the lawyer, we go to court. Said that's how you fight the cops. Like, you don't physically fight the cops, because you will never ever win that. And all of these videos that are surfacing, and I always say, I want to see the 2 minutes before people start recording.
Absolutely,
right? Because usually people don't start recording till shit's already on the fan. It's like, because I'm a very root of the problem person. Even with my kids, they'll come home saying, "Oh, my teacher XYZ." I said, "No," and I break it down till I get the full story to find out what happened.
Absolutely.
So to just say, "Oh, the cop shot someone," that's racist, that's systemic, I'm like, well, what do you do? So think about it. If the fire department gets called because a house is on fire, they get down to what started the fire. But whenever it comes to police brutality, or if a cop shoots someone, they just immediately want to crucify the cop. I realize it ends in a loss of life, but you have to get all the facts first. It's like you can't just assume that, because you saw a 30-second video that, we don't need a judge and a jury anymore.
I agree with you. And that's one of the biggest pet peeves that I have when I look at these Facebook videos. The first thing I ask myself is, what happened before they cut this camera on? Because this person did. I see people start stuff literally and then cut their camera on. And so we never saw what happened before that. But having said that, we can't. Two things. People. One of the reasons that the media protects it the way they does is, like you said, because there's money in it. And then again, it's based on people's own personal experiences. People still believe that people my age, certainly, even though things have gotten better, still believe that the police can go around doing stuff like that, because we saw it happen for decades in the 60s and the 70s. So it's really easy for me that somebody out there somewhere is still doing it. Whether they're still doing it or not is a separate issue. But because that's, based on my own personal experience, when I hear a story like that, oh yeah, that was like that cop I met back in 1982. Yeah, it sounds like him, So again, it's because it's monetized and based on my own personal experiences, why I respond the way I do.
Yeah, like with the Breonna Taylor case, when I heard, that she was sleeping in her bed, I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me, And so, and again, people are rioting and storming, and there's all kinds of signs and stuff out.
Yes.
And then as more the facts start coming out, so it's like the cops bang on the door. The boyfriend shoots the cop in the leg. So like they didn't even storm in the house immediately because they were attending to the cop who was shot. This was on the body cam footage. Then they go in and they shoot. But like if the boyfriend shot, how did she take all the bullets? And she was in the hallway, so she clearly wasn't sleeping in her bed.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I don't know if she was in her bed or not. My concern is, they were serving a no-knock warrant. So I don't know where you get this. They knocked first. And the biggest problem with this from the beginning was the no-knock warrant. The man thought they were breaking into his house. And he was defending his home and his girlfriends. I don't know where you get this from. The cops knocked first. They were breaking in. He didn't know who it was.
It's a public record.
Family, right? Somebody breaking at your door, you going to defend your family some kind of way. I would imagine. You're not going to wait to find out who it is or anything like that. You coming through you would expect a police officer to identify themselves. This was a no-knock warrant.
They had the body cam.
They had the body cam. What?
That's what I'm saying. See,
what did the body cam say?
Hold on.
And what?
Oh, let me finish. Right. So the media puts that blurb out to stir up everyone's emotions, and then people take that as just that's what happened. So then as the actual facts of the case, the police record, it's a public record. Like you can Google it and find the police record. And there were eyewitnesses saying, well, they testified. There were eyewitnesses who testified that they knocked even though they didn't have to because they had the no knock. So if he thought they were breaking in, they just would have busted in the door. So if they were actually in bed sleeping, and the cops bust in the door, he would have had to get his gun, make sure it was loaded, get out into the hallway. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it actually makes more sense that they banged on the door. Then he was able to get the gun, get in position, and he shot first. Then the cops came in and shot back. But my thing is, how did she take all the bullets if he admitted to shooting the gun? Like, that's what doesn't make sense.
I don't know. What did you read the report? You seem to have all of the other information. What did the report say? What did the body cam say? What did these witnesses say? I find it really hard to believe that a young black man in today's time would know that the police are knocking on the door and go get a gun and start shooting. He know he's going to get killed. I guess he didn't expect Breonna to get killed, but he know that's a no-win situation, and he doesn't want Breonna to get hurt. I find it impossible to believe that the police weren't politely knocking on the door and identified themselves, and he knew that they were the cops, and he still went and got his gun and shot it. I just don't. I wouldn't buy that for 1 second. One of the greatest joys that I've ever had is being a juror, and I got picked twice. Once was criminal and once was civil.
Yeah,
they usually like me because for some reason the defense knows that I'm gonna have my own mind and not be swayed by anything. But it's certainly when a police officer involved, they want to know that I'm going to be impartial and not believe a police officer just because he's a police officer. Police officers lie all the time. So I'm glad that in this particular Breonna Taylor case, there's other corroborating evidence, as you suggested, that they interviewed other witnesses, that even though I heard, interviews from neighbors who said they never even heard a knock, but you're saying that they were. And I'll look into it.
See, even with everything going on, with tensions being high, they made the right call based on the evidence and not convict. I think one of the officers was convicted because one of his bullets went into another
Right.
apartment.
Right.
Yeah, so like even in the face of people lining up the streets prepared to riot, they still made the right call. Because based on that info, as I said, and it's all out there. It's public record. Like you can see exactly what happened. But that's just my point, that the media shouldn't be able to spin a narrative until all of the facts are in. It's one thing to just report there was a police shooting, but they're painting the story like she was sleeping in her bed, she was an aspiring college student, and this and that. Like her name was on the warrant. It's like they were there looking for her.
No, they weren't. No,
yes.
They were not. No,
she
weren't. They were looking for her boyfriend. It was a dude. You just lost credibility in my eyes. Her boyfriend.
Her name was on the warrant.
Selling drugs. Her boyfriend has a history of selling drugs. They have been watching him for a long time. She just got caught up in the middle of it. Boyfriend definitely was a bad guy. He had drugs. He had been selling them. There was a lot of other stuff. At no point did I ever see Breonna Taylor's name on it. Where did you get that from?
It's on. I told you, it's all public record.
Okay, I gotta look it up. That's the first I've ever heard that.
Yes, because that part of the narrative isn't favorable. Like people don't want to hear that. You know what I'm saying? I told you, like for me to speak on anything, I've thoroughly researched. It's like one thing I don't do is I don't jump on bandwagons. I'm not left wing. I'm not right wing.
On the warrant for?
Because the way I remember it is when the ex-boyfriend got caught, they were sending the drugs to her house.
Oh.
And so I guess they were watching that, because he was in jail. The ex-boyfriend was in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Was he in jail? I don't know, but I know he got busted at some point. Mm-hmm. And so they started sending the drugs, via FedEx packages to Breonna Taylor's house. And then that's what got her house on the watch list.
Got it.
Yeah, so her name is on the warrant.
Okay,
and
but even so, okay, and you may be right, but even so, I still maintain that the police response would have been different had it been a white house, a white person's house. I will say that because if they knew that they're not going to just shoot up an entire house blindly and even have a bullet go into a next door neighbor's house and be charged with if it was in a white neighborhood. If it was a white suspect, little Becky lives next door and Molly and her children live over there. They would have been much more careful had it been, but it was okay to unload bullets into it. When you don't know who you're shooting at, who's shooting at, you clear the situation. I'm not even a cop. I would have cleared, made sure everybody was okay, assess the situation, call for backup, surround that house. You do other procedures. You don't just blindly fire through a door, which they were obviously doing anytime a bullet went in through the wall and into somebody else's house, and they were charged and convicted for it. The response would have been very different had this been a white neighborhood and a little, and Breonna Taylor had been a white girl. I promise you.
But what difference does that make?
What do you mean? What difference does it make?
Because that's not a defense.
What are you talking about? It is a defense. It's blatant racism. The police respond differently to from white people to black people. Look at the Capitol riots. Look at the Breonna Taylor case. I wasn't prepared for this. Had I known, I would have had all my bullet points prepared, and hopefully you and I will get to talk again. But I absolutely maintain that the police's response is very, very different when race is involved. For some reason, a white woman is not. If you look at police video, when the cops pull me over, for example, I'm very, very careful, like always. But they always come to the car with their hands on their gun. When little Molly white girl gets pulled over, it's like, can we see your driver? Oh, you're so cute. Get your driver, because she's not a threat to them. You understand? A black man is automatically assumed to be a threat, but little Molly white girl's not. And little Molly white girl could have been a Breonna Taylor, but of course, she's so cute. She reminds me of my sister's kid. Oh, she's going to be a cute little nurse. For some reason, their perception of her would have been very different had she been white. The cops, and so it does have a lot to do with it. They wouldn't have shot through a white girl's door. They wouldn't have shot into a white person's through a white wall of a neighbor. It would have had a totally different outcome. They would have surrounded the house, and through SWAT teams and negotiations, all that, he would have been arrested with no incidents. But because it was black, they opened fire on a black house in a black neighborhood and shot up, and the bullets went to people that had nothing to do with it. And I maintain that they would not have done that. It would have been a totally different response, a totally different outcome had they been white, as evidenced by the Capitol riots. That's the most recent different response that I can point out that's fresh in everybody's mind.
Yeah, but the Capitol riots, that was an obvious inside job. Like the security guards were letting them in. You know, like
because they were white. Absolutely.
That was clearly a setup.
So what? When the Black Lives Matter protesters came, the security guards weren't obviously just letting them in, but they let these white people in. White people let other white people in.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second. At that point, the Black Lives Matter riots have cost $2 billion in damage.
No, at the time that the Black Lives Matters went to the protesters went to the step, it was a year before the riots even started. It was absolutely before George Floyd had been killed. So you're wrong about that.
No. I'm just saying since. I'm just saying since, like that whole year. For you to say, you know, had BLM shown up at that time, they definitely would have been met with more resistance, because they already had a 6-month track record of they held Portland and Seattle hostage for over a month.
Let me tell you, as well they should have. But let me tell you something. There was a young African American man who made his own video on the steps of the Capitol riot. It was a black man. He said, now, right now, I'm blending in with these white people and just walking up the steps. Do you know that we were here a year ago? He's telling his narrative a year ago with BLM protesters. We couldn't even get this far. They made a barricade. There was like a whole line of Capitol police officers that prevented them from getting to the step. He did this video a year later while he's walking in with these white people to show people that previously they couldn't even make that far, and it had nothing to do with the George Floyd and all that other kind of stuff. It was prior to that. The Black Lives Matter movement started as a result of too many black men being shot. I believe it got hijacked and all kind of people. Most recently here in Philadelphia, if you look at the Black Lives Matter protests, most of it, because I live in North Philadelphia, was liberal white college students. The media doesn't tell you that. A lot of the looting and the tagging and spray painting stuff, and when confronted, I have the information. I'll be happy to share some videos with you. And when we confronted them, like, why are you doing? Oh, we're doing this for you. No, nobody asked you to do this for us. They're gonna come back and think we did this. So
that's where that woke term came from. The white people woke up.
Oh,
yeah, that's where that term came from.
So I got to learn some new jargon. The white people woke up. I think a lot of, and a lot of it, and it may be. I see a lot of, and again, when you look at the people who actually make money off of monetizing racism, they're usually white people. Black people, we don't have the resources or the network.
We got Al Sharpton. We got Jesse Jackson. We got who's that other dude? I don't remember his name. But these guys have been making money off of racism forever. Then we got the NAACP. There's lots of them.
So and y'all know white people that make money off racism.
I'm sorry. And we got Black Lives Matter. They've raised $1 billion.
Okay, so what? So what? If I go, if so and so goes and rapes a little girl, well, that makes it okay for me to go do it because somebody else is doing it. Just because people have been making money.
No, I was just saying because
white people to go do it.
No. I'm just saying because you were saying
justifying. It seems like you're justifying white people exploiting black people for monetary gain because black people do it.
I answered your question. You said it seems. You said it seems.
No.
You said no black people are doing it.
I didn't ask a question.
Yes, you did.
That most of the people that are doing it are so you named a handful.
You said I don't see black folks doing it, and I named 3 that do.
That's not what I said. That is not what I said at all. I said most of the people that are making money are white. I never said I don't see black folks doing it. No.
All right, this is that. Hold on.
I'm gonna play this video back when I get done.
I was gonna say this was at about the 48-minute mark. So when you watch it back.
Okay.
Because you did say that. That's why I answered
No, I
it.
did not say that. I said most of the people that are making money off monetizing racism are white. And those were my exact words.
And you said, I don't see black people doing it. That's why I jumped in.
I don't even talk like that. Dude, that sentence didn't come out of my mouth. I don't speak like that.
Okay, but I heard you. So, all right, we can move on. All right, so now I want to ask, do you get this passionate for black on black crime?
Absolutely, I do. I think one of the main reasons that I do is because the black on black crime that I see here in Philadelphia is I won't say, I don't get into conspiracy theories and say it's by design, but there are certain things in place that make it happen. I look at, for example, where I live, we used to have these carry out beer stores where it would be like a deli. You could buy liquor and beer and like cigarettes and drugs, paraphernalia, and whatever.
Yeah.
We realized that was a source of problem. There were people that were hanging outside panhandling. There were people that were selling drugs outside of the place. There were like a lot of violence, and then there were like drug wars over who's selling on what's corner. Whatever. When we got rid of that deli, when the white kids moved in, for better or for worse, they got rid of that. They didn't want any of that in their neighborhood, and I'm okay with that because now I live in a very, very, very nice area. But when you look at the pockets of crime in North Philadelphia, where I live, or throughout the city of Philadelphia in particular, there are, by design, you have these delis, you have drugs. If you look at, for example, crack, crack, and like, I want to say 82, 81 or 82.
I think it was 84.
It was like 84. It came on the scene. And I remember abandoned cars and abandoned houses and how the crime rate escalated and all kind of terrible crack scene situations. Nobody cared. But when little Susie, white girl in the suburbs, got it, then it became a crack epidemic. That's when it's nothing is an epidemic until it affects white people. If you look at opioids, people have been overdosing on drugs in the inner city for years. But when that suburban white kids got then now it's an opioid epidemic and we've got to do something about it or whatever. So absolutely, the response in this country has always been different for anything favorable to white people. Even for some reason, there's always this presumption that I would concede that there is a inequitable distribution of the wealth in this country. If you look at the most wealthy people in this country, I'm not just saying that they're not rich blacks, because there are some. I'm doing very well right now. I want the economy to do well, so my investments can do well. But but if you look at the overall majority of I was going somewhere with this. There's a presumption that because there's an inequitable distribution of wealth, they're going to automatically assume that the white man that is accused of the exact same thing that I am has resources that I'll have to a better lawyer because he's got more money than I am. So they're automatic assumptions that people make subconsciously. And I'm guilty of it. Let me tell you something. I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes when I'm coming from downtown, sometimes drunk, it's like 4 subway stops away or 5 minutes. When I go down in the subway and I see a bunch of young black kids, and I used to be one of them, I get nervous as hell. I go back upstairs and I go the other way. So I'm guilty of it as well. So I totally understand how the presumption of a threat might exist, and also the presumption of how a person might have more resources than I am simply because they're white. They're going to automatically assume that white man in a suit and tie, okay, we have to call him Mr. So-and-so because he's going to get his lawyer, or he might make a phone call and we might get in trouble. So yeah, the response in for me has been always very different based on and I don't know the exact details of this case, but there was a young black man, a young black kid, and a young white boy. I guess they were about 16, They committed the exact same crime, the exact same day. They were together in the exact same courtroom. For whatever reason, they were tried separately.
Mm-hmm.
And the black kid was sent to jail, and the white boy got off. I don't remember how that happened. I don't know if the white kid had a different lawyer but it's the exact same crime, exact same day, exact same judge, exact same courtroom, two different outcomes. So again, I would submit, I don't know if it was because the young black man was presumed to be more of a threat because he was a young black man. I don't know, or if it was because due to this inequitable distribution of wealth that I mentioned, that they assumed that his father, had white money or he had access to a power lawyer or something that this black kid didn't have. But I still maintain that.
I mean, like, wasn't there both first offense?
Yes.
Okay, yes, because that matters too.
Yeah. It was their both first offense, and it was a very, very serious matter. But it concerns me that when people don't realize, and when I realize that I have certain prejudice and preconceived ideas that make me comfortable too, still in the back of my head. I cannot tell you. Let me tell you something, and I'm gonna be real. Every time I ever had somebody break into my house, it wasn't no white boy. It was somebody black. You understand? When somebody vandalized my car, it was a black person. When I got, it's always somebody black. So I can't go around saying white man's doing or da 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 da. It's always somebody black. But having said that, it would really bother me if, something happened to me or some black person that I love, and then somebody, and I said, well, why did the cops beat him up like that? Well, why don't you ask that when, black people are killing each other in North Philly? I'll get to that. But right now, I need you to tell me why they're treating him this way. And that's something that Candace Owens does all the time. Every single time they ask her a question, she'll go off and show you something that's totally worse that black people are doing instead of answering the question. They asked her a question about the Ku Klux Klan and white supremacy and thought that asked her if they thought it was a problem. She said, well, what about Black Lives Matter or something like that? She said she never, ever answered the question. She could have said, yes, I believe it is a problem, or no, I don't believe it's a problem, but I do believe Black Lives Matter. She never even addressed that she's a black white supremacist. I have never, ever thought I could coin that phrase. Candace Owens is a black white supremacist. Candace Owens worked for Turning Point USA, where she denounced the Republican Party and Donald Trump. And then then she worked to a project called Project 360. They came to her with money. Listen, why don't you start your own project, the Blexit Project, and you can get black people to become Republicans. They can exit the Democrat Party and become Republicans. And then her whole term changed. She turned for a paycheck. Candace Owens, do you know I have 3 daughters, and the oldest one is off in college now. But early on, when we would come down my house in New Jersey, on the other side of the bridge, at the bottom of my landing, there was a picture of Candace Owens, and I would make them slap the picture every day and say something bad about her because I never wanted my daughters to be like her. I didn't want them. Candace Owens dropped out of school or got kicked out of college. All the money that I'm busting my ass to put my girls through school, for them to tell me they dropped out because they wanted to be like Candace Owens would kill me. Candace Owens ran off to the United Kingdom and married who she loved, and I don't have a problem with that. She married I don't have a problem with that. But for me, I love my black family. I love Black Thanksgiving and black family reunions and all this other kind of stuff. And to lose that bit of history and that bit of culture because my daughter decided she didn't want to be black anymore, or was embarrassed by blacks, or embarrassed by us or her family, would be very, very painful. It would be devastating, and it would certainly make me ask myself what I did wrong.
Let me ask you. So, just because I told you, I like to look at the big picture of things.
Oh, absolutely.
So when asking about, hey, why did that policeman beat up that person? It's like, don't you think that the black on black crime is a bigger issue? If you go based on sheer volume, and I don't know the exact number, so I'm going to estimate, but like last year in 2020, there were 9,000 blacks killed by other blacks. 9,000.
So what does that have to do with?
Wait.
Let me give you an example. If your house is on fire, right, and I'm sitting here trying to help you put this fire out, and somebody like you says, "Well, wait a minute. Somebody else's house is important too. What about all of those other houses? Their house is not on fire right now." When I'm addressing why the cops have this guy on the ground right now, I don't need somebody like you asking me, don't I think black on black is problem? It probably is. I'm certain it is a bigger problem, but I'm addressing what's in front of me right now. And it frustrates me to no end when I'm attempting to do that and somebody throws up something that has nothing to do with what's right in front of me. If I have to pay my electric bill right now or my lights are going to get cut off, do you really think that the electric company cares that my rent was more important? They're going to cut the lights off. So I have to deal with what's in front of me right now or suffer the consequences of it.
No, I get that, but if you can help to alleviate one, it minimizes the police contact in the other. So teaching young kids to strive for more. Like, I personally think that the biggest issue within the black community, and every time you say it, I feel it even more, is that they think that they're less than. Not even the fact that the white people may treat them as less than. You think that you're less than. And then that leads to a life of crime or getting into drugs and everything else because you think that you're less than. Say, I was born in New York City, but I'm the youngest of 7 kids. And my dad and my mom didn't want to raise us there. So they moved us out. I think I wasn't even three yet as the youngest, but like my older siblings, they had a bulk of their childhood in the inner city. And so my parents moved us out and they just hammered into our heads that no one is superior to you. Like, no one. Like, you can accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. And we just heard that every single day growing up. And out of all 7 of us, I mean, one of my brothers, he had some small stints getting in trouble, but all the rest of us, we've all led very solid, successful lives. And I just don't understand why within the community, we're so quick to jump on the wrongdoings instead of looking at people like Michael Jordan. Like, dude's a billionaire. It's like, that is your ceiling. It's like your ceiling isn't this life of crime or surviving the streets. It's like you were born with gifts and the world needs your gifts. And I try, like, when I speak in schools, especially in the black, like the predominantly black schools, like, that's my message to those kids. It's like, yeah, things are going to happen out there in that world, but you have to be strong enough to get through it.
No, like I totally agree.
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate. My mother was an African-American female school teacher, and I was educated by mostly African-American school teachers and some Jewish liberals. And it was very, very important that we knew Black history. And the reason was so that we would have something to be proud about. We would learn about George Washington Carver and W.E.B. Du Bois and all these other kinds. So we would have role models and see people that did great things. And then some stupid ass like Candace Owens will come along and say, oh, that's racist or whatever, that's just so she can get a paycheck. If you look at Juneteenth, the idea behind Juneteenth, why we embraced it here in Philadelphia, was to say, slavery did happen. That's the past. You're free now. Get over all that crap. Move on with your life. Stop making excuses for your stop using an excuse for your failures and all this other kind of stuff. We're going to celebrate freedom and we're going to be free. But all of our attempts to instill positivity in African American children and to have programs that promote that are met by people like Candace Owens that will say it's racist. I remember, and Candace Owens said that the NAACP is one of the worst things that ever happened to Black people. I researched in 96. They threatened to kill Candace Owens. Some white people did. She went to the NAACP. The NAACP helped her sue, and she got money for it. So for her to take a paycheck now to say that the NAACP is one of the worst things that ever happened to Black people when she utilized them for a lawsuit is ridiculous. but having said that, yes, I do believe the root cause of a lot of the black on black crime is we don't. One of the things that happened here in Philadelphia, the building that I live in is called the North Tower. Back in it was built in like the 40s or the 50s when black doctors and lawyers, even though they made it, there was still segregation, so they couldn't stay in hotels and nice apartment buildings with white doctors and white lawyers. So they built the building that I live in now, and I'm so grateful to the old heads that still live here because they tell me the history of the building. They tell me, who I'm doctors, lawyers, reporters, and these are people that actually give back to the community. But what actually happened when that sister graduated from Temple Law or Temple Medical, they moved out to the suburbs. There's nothing wrong with that. There really, really isn't. Yeah. But for me, even though I have a very nice suburban house, I keep my North Philadelphia pied-à-terre so that I have an ability to give back to my community and they can see a positive role model. They call me OG. Original. Oh, they go OG. Oh, that's OG. They see me going. OG got on his nursing uniform. OG. I remember OG when he was going to school. Yo, you finished, OG? Yeah, you finished. So so having said that, the root cause of it is I feel less than, or I don't feel good at, because they don't see positive role models. They don't see that black doctor. They don't see that black lawyer. They don't even see black professionals anywhere. The people that they see are the with the nice cars and are the drug dealer, even though that's very, very short lived because they either end up dead or in jail. But I think the having said that, addressing the root cause of these things is going to take some time. It's going to take a community, more awareness. It's going to take an overall community effort at a national level. But we cannot pretend that there are still smaller fires along the way.
Well said. Well said. All right, and we'll end it there. So this was a good talk. So
thank you, man. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to have you on my other show too, where we talk about overcoming obstacles.
Give me a heads up so I can prepare. I'd love that.
Yeah.
All
That's
right, brother.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
All right.
Bye. All right, so that was Marlon. I'm gonna wrap up this episode. We about to get deep with Robert B. Foster. So we're back next week, and I don't know what the topic is right yet. So I'll post about what we're going to be doing next week on Monday. Have a great day.